whatever data you are feeding in the website. Suppose you have created one account in the Facebook. When you sign up for the first time, you fill your details. Whatever details the form asks from you, you fill the details. You have any bank account, you are taking net banking facility, you feed your data. You have your account, you have your profile on Instagram. So wherever on social media, on internet, you have any account, whether your account is on social media site, whether your account is on some other website, you fill your information is stored digitally in the system. Server pay, your information has been stored. This is called digital property right, the rights that have been given to you at that time. Now it is up to you how much information you want to share and how much information you don't want to share. Like suppose I give one live example to you people. You people are using Instagram. It is up to you whom you want to follow, whom you don't want that person should follow you. You can restrict the person from following you, and you have the privilege to follow any person. You can make the settings according to your wish, because you are the sole owner of your profile. You are the creator of your profile. So some digital rights have been given to you. These rights are called digital property rights. So these are the various things that include your digital property rights. Any online personal account, maybe your bank account, maybe you are doing any online course, you have joined some website where you are taking online coaching, you have created your profile over there. Like suppose Diksha app is there. Diksha app has been created by CBSE for the teachers, so that teachers can do online courses. So teacher has created their profile, the data of every teacher is on that, right? Then social media accounts, your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your Instagram account, shopping accounts like Amazon or Flipkart. Your family is regular buyer from the Amazon. So your family creates their profile, their account on Amazon. Online storage account, Google Drive. You feed your important data in the Google Drive. You store your data. Photo and video sharing accounts, like you are doing video chatting or video calling and you have joined some software for that. Video game accounts, you are in habit of playing online games, so you register yourself with one website that is providing you the facility for online games. Intellectual property, that I told you yesterday, that whether you have created anything, whether you have invented anything, you get some rights from the government side, and that rights are called intellectual property rights. Students online, am I audible to you? All right. Last is website or blogs that are managed by you. You have created one blog. You post the messages on the blog. You post some information on the blog, and the persons whom you have enrolled on the blog, they reply to your post. They put messages in response to your post. Got it? Clear? Now, when you have created your profile, some rights are being given to you. When you get those rights, you are having 100% privilege that what information you want to share with others, up to how much limit you want to share the information. Like suppose I have my profile on social media account. It is up to my wish with whom I want to share the information, whether I want to allow Bhavya to interact with me, whether I want Garav to interact with me. It is up to me whether I want to share my information with Mayank or I do not want to share my information with Mayank. It is up to me. And if I'm sharing the information with Mayank, how much information, to what extent I am sharing the information. This is the detailed meaning of digital property rights. Up till here, am I clear? Students online, am I clear? I am proceeding further. Now, this is a real fact that when you are having data online, you are prone to risk. The risk may be to hack your data by the hacker, right? Or the risk may be that your information may be misused, right? And your credit card, your debit card details might be hacked. So what are the threats? What are the risks involved in the case of digital property rights? First is, digital software penetration tools. The real meaning, the simple meaning of penetration is to get into. Two persons are talking, I penetrate among them, I interfere among them, and I try to hear the information. Your online account is created, your online profile is created, and hackers, they try to penetrate into your software, they try to capture your information, they try to hack your information, right? And they are not paying you for it, they are not letting you know about it, you are unaware about it. That is called digital software penetration tool. Maybe the hacker is using some software with which he is hacking your data. He is hacking, he is cracking your software code. Next is stealing and plagiarizing codes of your digital properties. You have created one software. The hacker tries to capture your source code. He created a duplicate version of the software and present the software on its own name. You are the owner, you are the creator, but a hacker, he cracks your code, he creates another software, a duplicate version of your original software, you are unaware of it, and he released the software under his own name. Right? Stealing plus plagiarizing. First, he steals your source code. Second, he plagiarizes. He creates the duplicate version of the software using your source code. Right? Now, how we can protect DPR? DPR means digital property rights. In one mark, you may have the full forms also, like IPR, intellectual property rights, DPR, digital property rights, OSS, open source software. Like in the further lecture, more full forms will come. Okay. So how you can protect your DPR? Anti-tamper solutions. You can use anti-tamper solutions which will prevent the hacker to hack your information, right? Like the hackers may use reverse engineering. Basically, reverse engineering is also known as backward engineering. It is sometimes considered legal, but sometimes it is considered illegal also. What happens actually in the reverse engineering? The hacker, they breaks your source code. They capture your source code and they manipulate it. They manipulate it. They make changes into it. So we can avoid hackers by applying proper safety measures so that our software code, our details are not being hacked by the hacker. I give one example to you. Whenever you are purchasing something online via debit card, one OTP comes on the phone number that is registered with the bank. OTP stands as a security mechanism. Suppose you are not purchasing anything and you receive an OTP. In respect to your debit card, you receive one message for OTP that will give alert to you that your detail have been misused and you can prevent from giving the OTP. There is an alert to you. Whenever you sign, suppose you are signing in Google from one device, then to the other device, Google will alert you. Gmail will at once alert you that you have been signed under this name from other device. Is it you? If yes, press yes. If not, you can prohibit. Sometimes when you log in the Gmail, you get one verification code on your mobile. You press yes, the same yes button comes on your mobile. Then they give one number, the same number comes on your phone. When you tap on that number, then Gmail recognize that it's the real user. Sorry. So such security mechanisms have been given to your users to avoid any misuse of the data, right? I don't know why students, they enter late in the class. Then legal clauses. When you download any app from Play Store, the first window that comes after installation is terms and conditions. All the conditions, all the terms, all the clauses are mentioned into that. You have to read those. Sometimes what we do, unknowingly we click on the agree button because we are in a hurry. We are in a hurry to download the app, but we never read the instructions given in the terms and condition clauses. Might be there some clause which is very important for us, but we get unaware and later on we are prone to risk. So to avoid such problems, you should mention all the legal conditions that are required to access your software so that later on no misuse of data should take place. Last but not the least, limit the sharing of software code. It is up to you that with whom you want to exchange, whom you want to share your software code. I want to share my coding with Kunal. I want to share my coding with Japanjot. I don't want to share my coding with Bhavya. So it is up to me. I will decide with whom I want to share my data. Right? So this was about your digital property rights. And here I finish the part 1 of cyber ethics. Clear? Students online, are you clear? Now I'm proceeding with the part 2. Is PPT visible? Part 2, online students? Himanshu, Devanshi, Mannat? All right. Now, part 2, we start with open source philosophy. Basically, the simple meaning of open source is a software which is accessible to everyone. You are free to use, you are free to copy, free to distribute further, free to modify. But as per the cost factor is concerned, the price factor is concerned, it may be free or it may not be free. It might happen that you are to pay a nominal cost. Like when you were in 9th class, we started with Open Office. Very easily, you were coming in the lab and you were taking the software for Open Office. And you were being given, because it is open source, you can share with each other. No problem. You can customize the coding, you can modify it, right? You can distribute it further. No restrictions are there in the open source software. No any rigid restrictions are there. Right? This is open source. For example, OpenOffice.org, your open office software. Python is open source. Mozilla Firefox, the browser that you use often, it is open source browser. Internet Explorer and Google Chrome, they are not open source. Mozilla Firefox is an open source browser. Right? Then comes the next category, free software. By name, it is very much clear what is free software. Free software means the software which is freely available, free of cost. You can share it, you can modify it, you can distribute it, right? You can make more improved version of that. If your software is crossing 4 stages of freedom, there are 4 stages: stage 0, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. If your software is crossing all the 4 stages. My first stage, my first freedom is freedom 0. You got my point? Like I give one example to you. When you open your book, you see the indexing. First chapter is being given index 1. Now suppose I am creating index, but I am not giving chapter 1 as 1. I am giving it 0. So if my first chapter is 0, what will be the number of my fourth chapter? 3. So 0 to 3, 4 freedoms. If your software crosses these 4 freedoms, then your software is considered to be the free software. Basically, 10th class, keep one thing in mind, that free software and open source software, they are mostly interchangeable terms. There is not much difference in the two. Difference lies at only one respect. Free software is free of cost. Open source software is not free. You may have to pay some nominal cost for that. Very nominal cost, not much. Now, what are your free softwares? Linux, like Windows. Windows is an operating system. Linux is also an operating system, but open source operating system. In Linux operating system, you cannot run exe files. And when you cannot run exe files, there is no risk of virus in that. So we never install antivirus when we are using Linux operating system. Right? Then VLC media player, it is also free software. Now, what are those 4 stages that are essential for one software to be considered as free software? Now, this is the definition that is given by Richard Stallman. Yesterday, I told you that to avoid plagiarism, you should cite the source. If you have taken definition of some renowned author or any researcher, you mention the name of that person. Right? So Richard Stallman, he is the person who actually gave foundation to the open source softwares. So according to him, what is the definition of free software? Free software is a matter of liberty. Liberty means freedom. Nothing is rigid. Nothing is bound. You are not bound by any government restrictions. You are free to use. Not price. Price is not a matter here. It is free of cost. To understand the concept, you should think of free as in free speech. Like you are giving talk to anyone freely. We are saying anything to anyone freely. We have freedom to speak. We are not bound by somebody. We are having freedom to speak. It is a matter of users' freedom to run the software, to copy, to distribute, like you can share it with each other. Change and improve the software. You can create more modified version of the software. Day by day, as you know, technology changes. So versions are created. Every time you get updated version of that. Like in Play Store, if you visit my app, you will see message for updation of app comes. You frequently update your WhatsApp, you update your Instagram, you update your Snapchat, right? Why updation is required? So that the recent versions can be installed in your original software. Got it? More precisely, it refers to 4 kinds of freedom. Now, what is the first freedom? The freedom to run the software for any purpose. You can use your software for any purpose. It is not rigid that this particular software can be used in this purpose only. Right? Like OpenOffice software. It is not fixed that OpenOffice software can be only used in schools. It cannot be used in the office. Right? The freedom to study how the program works and adapt it to your needs. Is software as per your requirement? is software has been designed as per your taste. The freedom to redistribute the copies. You can distribute the software with each other. I have given to Bhavya, Bhavya can give to Japanjot, Japanjot can give to Harsimran, Harsimran can give to her friend. So it is freely distributable, right? Next and the last freedom is the freedom to improve the program and release your improvement to the public. You have modified your software. You have created the recent version of your software, and you are sharing your recent version of the software with the public so that all the people who are involved, they should get benefit. The society should take benefit of your software, right? So when these four freedoms are fulfilled, when your software crosses these four freedoms, your software is considered to be the free software. Am I clear? Students online, am I clear? Devanshi, Himanshu, Khayati, Kavya. Okay, okay, fine. Now our next concept is open source. A special note I have given here. Let's read the note. Open source softwares, on the other hand, can be freely used, but it does not have to be free of charge. Free software is free. When you are using open source software, it is not 100% free. There comes the difference in free and open source. Rest, everything is same. You can run, you can copy, you can distribute, you can modify. No, not much restrictions are there. But at the time of cost, there is one difference. You have to pay a nominal cost. A nominal payment must be done by the user who wishes to use the open source software. Clear? Now, basically, what exact definition of open source that is given by the Open Source Foundation? Open source, who is this entering in the last 5 minutes? Open source does not just mean access to the source code or distribution terms in OSS. Now, when you are having open source software, it is not simply meaning the distribution. I have open source, I distribute it to Bhavya. Only this much is the thing. No, open source technology, open source concepts are not limited up to the distribution. It is far beyond the distribution. What factors, what criteria is included when we say a software is an open source software? No restriction on the distribution of software. It is freely distributable. You can distribute to anyone. There is no restriction that I can give to only this person or I can give only to that person. You can share among each other freely. You're not bound on any restriction. Program must include source code and allows it distribution. When you design a software, you have the source code, the programming behind that software. When you want to modify the software, definitely you will make changes in the source code only. I just recall there was one movie that came on the basis of computer game. I think Ravan, if I'm not wrong. One movie was there, Ravan, in which the actor of the movie, he designed one game. And later on, he made changes in the source code. And one negativity was being created in the source code. Right? So when you have the source code, you can modify the source code in order to create the modification or the modified code, more better code. You can make changes in the code. Like suppose I have created one software and my software is lacking one feature. So I will update my code so that the new feature is incorporated into my coding, right? And in open source software, you get the source code also. And when you get the source code, you can make modifications in that. The license must allow modifications and derived work, and the same must be distributed under the same terms as license of the original software. When you took open source software, you need to have one license. That license was having some terms and conditions. Okay. When you create the modified version of the software, when you create one more version of the software, the same conditions which were prevailing on the license of the original software will be the same terms that will apply to the modified version. I have A software, original software. A.1 is the modified version. Whatever terms and conditions are applied on A version will be the same that are applied on A.1 version. It must not be there that conditions of A are separate, terms and conditions of A.1 are separate. Because A.1 version has been created by modifying the source code of A version. Right? The integrity of the author's source code must be maintained. The integrity means not making much changes, that the whole code has been changed. The integrity, the originality must remain fixed. Right? The license must not discriminate against any group of persons. I will give source code only to this person. I will not give source code to this person. This should not be there. There should be no discrimination among individuals when you are sharing the code. If he is using the code freely, he is given right to modify the code. Second person should also be given the same right. Third person should also be given the same right. We should not restrict ourselves. This individual can make changes, he cannot make changes. On the ground of discrimination, on the basis of individuals, we should not put discrimination while providing the license for the open source. No discrimination against fields of endeavor. This point means that in one area, in one field, you are using open source. Why not in the other field? Why this restriction that open source software can be only used in schools? It cannot be used in other offices. It is only for the students to study. It is not for the office persons to use in their work. When it is freely distributable, when it is freely shareable, why not to share with everybody? Why to make it fixed for one purpose? Open source should be used for various purposes. It should not be rigid up to one field, that only in this particular area this software can be used, and in this particular area you cannot use the software. This criteria should not be there. Okay. License must not be specific to a product. It should not be rigid up to one type of product, that only for this product license is available. For this software, license is not available. If OpenOffice org is there, license is there. But if we use Mozilla Firefox, the license is not there. All the softwares which are coming under the category of open source, they should have same terms, same conditions. There should be no discrimination. Right? Students online, am I clear? Mannat, Khayati, Devanshi? All right. Now moving further, license must not restrict others. License must be technological neutral. It should not be rigid for one type of technology. It is freely, it is not neutral, that only one particular segment it can be used. Right? Now, the software which is both free plus open source, a software which is free, having the features of free software, plus it has the feature of open source software, is known as FOSS. The full form of FOSS is free and open source software. So I told you in the beginning, for 1 mark, you may have the definitions, right? Like OSS, open source software, FOSS, free and open source software, right? So a software which is in the category of free as well as in the category of open source is considered to be the FOSS, right? Now, these are the basic terms that are considered while learning about open source softwares. First is, what is OSS? That is, what is open source software? The open source software is a software which is freely distributable. Main features, main points of open source, right? You can modify it, freely modifiable. Source code is available to the user. When source code is available, then only you can make changes in the software. And some amount of nominal charges are being paid in order to hire the open source software. Now, FLOSS. Basically, FLOSS and FOSS, they are same. One addition of the letter L is there. L is liber. Liber means freedom. You are free to use. So the software which is free and open source, both categories are included. One, it is free. One, it is open source. That is considered to be the FLOSS. So another full form you get, FLOSS, free, liber, and open source software. What is FOSS? Free and open source software. What is DPR? Digital property rights. What is IPR? Intellectual property rights. What is OSS? Open source software. Right? Now, GNU. How to pronounce it? GNU. It is pronounced as GNU. What happened actually? Earlier we used to use Unix operating system. That was command line based. Then we created graphical based operating system in which you can use mouse, in which you can select the object, in which graphical environment was provided, right? And more user friendly. Unix was not user friendly. We created Linux, right? That was having the graphical user interface concept and it was user friendly, right? So Linux was open source software, right? So we refer to the Linux operating system as GNU. The full form of GNU is not Unix. Not Unix. That this is more advanced to Unix. Unix was command based, Linux is graphical based. Unix was not user friendly, Linux was user friendly. So our GNU full form stands for GNU, not Unix. The NU stands for not Unix. GNU basically is an animal. It is basically an animal, right? And we mainly signify freedom. By using that animal logo, by considering that logo of the animal, we put our focus on freedom.